Today's video is creating a card featuring the Friendly Wishes card kit from Gina Designs plus a few extras. Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Eggen and welcome to my channel. A few of the products that I picked out to use is the Spring Clusters stamp set and coordinating die. This is a part of the Friendly Wishes card kit along with the coordinating stencil. I have the double backgrounds one and the Say It Large stamp and coordinating die set. Plus, I'm going to be using the Circle Shadow Shaker. I mainly just wanted a circle out of this, so any circle die will work. I'm going to start by stamping just this one cluster of flowers. I really like how it had that kind of arch shape to it. And since I'm going to be using the coordinating stencil to color it in, I'm going to first stamp it out in a light ink, which is skeleton leaves. Now, after I stamped it down, I realized I did not clean my stamp set very well. So it has quite a dark outline to it. I am going to turn my cardstock and stamp it again after I thoroughly cleaned my stamp because I wanted you to be able to see what the skeleton leaves looks like. After I stamp it, I am going to be leaving it in my Misti tool. I do this almost every time I use a color layering stencil. So I'm going to leave that stamp in there so that I can stamp it again with black ink once I'm done coloring it in. The main reason I do this is so that I don't risk smearing any of the black ink when I start to do my ink blending. So I took some repositionable tape and I added it to the back of my cardstock so I could secure it to my work surface, which is a glass mat. And then I'm going to pick out the stencil for this particular arch. There are three stencils in the bundle, one for each of the flower clusters. Once I have this first one centered up, I am going to just hold my stencil down with some washi tape, and then I'm going to pull out the inks that I'm going to use for coloring. So the first ink that I'm going to use is the brand new Sunkissed Coral Ink, and I'm going to use a mini blending brush to do my ink blending. So the idea for my flowers was to go over them with a kind of light color and then go around the outer edges with a darker shade to give it that kind of more dimensional look. So starting with the sun-kissed coral, and then I'm going to leave the stencil there, and I'm going to come in with a detail blending brush using cherry red ink. In hindsight, I probably should have picked maybe a darker red because once the inks dry back, there wasn't as much contrast as I had hoped. So maybe try just a little bit darker of a red if you decide to do this technique. So I'm going to remove the stencil now and move on to the next layer of the stencil, which is going to color in the two flowers off on the side. Now you could do these in different colors, but I really kind of wanted to stick to my main color scheme here. Starting out again with that sun-kissed coral, and then coming in around the outer edges of each of the flowers using that detail blending brush and also that cherry red ink. Once I removed the stencil, it came out a little more on the red side than I had anticipated, but it is still a gorgeous color combination. Now, I did clean my stencil off screen because I didn't want to risk transferring any of that red ink. And then I'm moving on to the leaves, starting with the Emerald Coast, which is another one of the brand new colors that is absolutely gorgeous. I applied that with a detail blending brush, and then I'm going to come in with the blue Denim Ink, again with another detail blending brush. And this I'm going to come in just ever so slightly from where the flower is, and then just out on the leaves, just a smidge to add that contrast. And in doing this, I discovered this is a gorgeous color combination. The last piece on this stencil is going to be doing the centers, and for that, I am going to be using chocolate truffle ink. And I do want to mention that there is also some poly glaze for these particular designs that is available separately outside of the kit if you would like to foil them with your fuse foiling system. I will link those and all the supplies I'm using in today's video down below in my video description and over on my blog. So I brought this cardstock piece back into my Misti, and then I'm going to stamp the image again over the top using the Obsidian ink. And this is going to bring all the details of those flowers right back to the forefront. I'm going to line up the coordinating die, hold it down with a low tack tape, and then I'm going to die cut it using my Intri-Cut die cut machine, and I do have the magnetic mat on here. I die cut out a second piece out of the rest of that cardstock, so that's why that piece looks like that, as I just die cut over that stamped image I had done. And then I'm layering them up together with my Connect glue that I have in a fine tip bottle just to help add stability to this because I did use the layering weight cardstock from Gina K Designs. My plan for this is I want that floral to kind of frame around part of a circle. So I am using that plain circle from the Circle Shadow Shaker. That's a mouthful. And I'm die cutting that out of some layering weight white cardstock as well. Now, really, any circle shape will work here. An oval shape would work. I wanted the flower to kind of frame around something. For the background for all of this to go on, I have my double background one stamp set in here. Now, I flipped this. So the actual stamp portion of it is facing up and I placed it in my Misty. This is a different way for me to try using a background stamp. I was kind of experimenting here. And I'm placing a piece of innocent pink cardstock over the top. And then I'm going to add a little bit of repositionable tape to the back. And I'm going to close the door of my Misty to pick up the cardstock. So that repositionable tape is going to hold my cardstock in place. So really, I'm kind of stamping this backwards. I kind of wanted to see how this would work. I'm inking up that background with innocent pink ink. I probably should have conditioned this just a little bit better because there is a lot of a stamp set here, but it still stamps out beautifully. Now, the first time I stamped it down, it wasn't quite as solid, the lines, as I had hoped it would be. So I'm going to ink it up again, but that's just typical for a brand new stamp that I didn't probably condition very well. So I stamped it twice. I'm going to leave it at that. And then I'm going to trim this panel down. So originally the panel is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm trimming the panel down. So I'm taking about 1/4 of an inch off of each edge. So I have 3 3/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to stamp a sentiment from the Say It Large stamp set. Now, there is a bundle that is available. I believe at the time of this video, it is out of stock, but be sure to click the Notify Me button so you get a notification as soon as it comes back in. Now, I'm inking this up in the Obsidian ink once again, so it's going to be a nice, dark, and bold sentiment. And in the bundle, you get the coordinating die for this. And this was really interesting how it cut out. So I lined up the die and I held it down again with that low tack tape. And then I'm going to actually trim my panel in half so it's a little bit smaller. And I'm going to die cut this using my mini Intri-Cut die cut machine. Now, this is not as hard as I'm making it look on screen. The reason it looks so hard is because I have a ring on my forefinger and it's really hard to turn the handle when you have a ring on your pointer finger. So otherwise, it die cuts smoothly. I did die cut out multiples of it. Now, when I'm layering these up, I'm only going to layer it up once with my cardstock, and then I'm going to wait to add any more layers to it. So I thought it was really interesting how this die cut out. The H and the U are separate from the G and the S. And the reason I'm not adding all of my die cut layers right away is because I'm waiting to see how much layering I need to do or if I'm going to be overlapping an image. And you'll see what I mean in just a moment. Now, right now, I'm kind of laying out the design. I have my background here on a piece of white cardstock that is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I decided to pop up that background. I'm just going to be using some foam tape to this, but I decided that I wanted to add just a little bit more to that background. So I should have probably waited to do my foam tape. Sometimes I just don't think things all the way through. So I added the foam tape and then I'm bringing this over to my splat box. And I have some white acrylic spray here that I mixed with just a little bit of water. And I'm going to splatter this onto my background. Now, the background looks great as is. You could really leave it as that. I just really love adding splatter and sprays to my backgrounds. I always kind of pick up that spray and tap off first and then come to the cardstock. So I'm kind of testing the splatters before I bring it to the background. I did dry those splatters a little bit with a heat tool, and then I'm bringing in the Shimmery Snow Glimmer Mist from Gina K Designs to add just a little bit of shine to that background. And then once again, I'm going to dry that with my heat tool. I'm moving over it pretty quickly because I do have that foam tape back there and I don't want that to let loose at all. I remove the backing of that tape and then I'm attaching this to my card panel. So I have those really nice white borders on the side. I love this kind of design where you have that background in the middle and then just the border on the edge, which could be white cardstock or colored cardstock. For the rest of this card, I didn't want to add too much more lift with foam tape on it, so I just die cut out another circle and I'm attaching those two together with the tape. And here's a close up of how shimmery that background is. So it's not really in your face. It's kind of a little overexposed when I tilt it into the light, but it has just a beautiful shimmer to it. I'm going to go ahead and attach my circle. So I'm putting it up towards the top and making sure it's centered on each side. And then I'm taking my floral arrangement, added liquid glue to it, and I'm going to place that down over in that left hand corner. And then here is why I waited to add any more layers to that sentiment as far as cardstock. So I lined it up how I wanted it to go. Now there is that smaller sentiment on the bottom. That one I had already had stamped and die cut out that I'm going to add underneath. The reason I waited to add any more layers until now is I needed to see how much of these letters are going to overlap that floral arrangement. So obviously the G and the S is not overlapping the flowers. So I added the layer there, another layer of cardstock. But here there's a little bit of the H that is going to overlap. So I'm going to cut that off and then add this part. So this last half of the H and the U is not going to overlap. So I'm trying to make this as flush as I can because obviously I need a little bit more lift to make it flush with the flowers since they do have another layer of cardstock. I hope that all made sense. Made sense in my head. And I'm going to do the same thing with the word sending. So I just trimmed off the S there and then I can layer the rest of that up. So you could absolutely use foam squares, but when I do this, it's just using up kind of the rest of the paper that I had stamped a sentiment on or did the stamping of the flower. I'm just kind of using up my scrap pieces of cardstock by doing it this way. And in case you missed it, the scissors that I'm using are the brand new Gina K Designs scissors, which are included in the card kit. It's kind of like a little bonus item. I went ahead and added that second sentiment underneath the word hugs. That sentiment comes off of that same Spring Clusters stamp set that the floral arrangement came from. And then I'm finishing off with clear quartz sequins using my Connect glue in a fine tip bottle and my pick and stick tool. Before I add this to a card base, I had a little bit of overhang, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim that off. And this is only just using one of the floral arrangements in that card kit, and there's so much more that you can do with it. And again, I will have all of the supplies that I used today linked down below in the video description. So if you enjoyed today's video, here is another one that I think you might enjoy. Thanks for stopping by.